Welcome to the Cabrera Lab Podcast.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Stupendous.
Stupendous is an interesting word because it starts with what sounds like stupid, but ends in endous. And then I always I see saying stupid, and then you say stupendous.
Stupendous.
What does stupendous actually mean? Fabulous?
Yeah, kind of like fabulous.
What's the origin of the word stupendous?
Good word. Good question. I don't know the etymology of it.
Extremely impressive.
Extremely impressive.
Oh, I'm extremely
You're
impressive.
extremely impressive today.
That's not
That's
what
stupendous.
I meant, but yeah, I didn't mean I was extremely impressive. That was not the vibe.
Yeah, I thought you meant super.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things we could talk about today, but we've had a lot of interesting conversations at our dinner table that I think we should sort of hit on a little bit because it's becoming sort of a theme that I think a lot of people probably are thinking about too, around this idea of not taking things personally, checking your mental model, making assumptions instead of asking questions. We have teenagers and we have friends, and most people tend to be a little more, we're very sensitive to feeling a bunch of stuff when people say things that are probably intended not to make you feel a particular way. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about it because we were talking about it the other day. When we say stop making assumptions, what does that really mean? Like I say, you're in a conversation with somebody and there's a mental model on my side and there's a mental model on your side. How do we make sure we meet each other in the middle?
With assumptions or with feelings, like taking things personally?
Well, I think they're somewhat related, so we could do them separately. So maybe...
Yeah, generally speaking, I think you can start with a kind of a blanket rule that 99% of the things that you take personally, you probably shouldn't.
Really?
Yeah.
99%?
That's what I would say.
So what makes us tend to take it personally?
If it's of the person.
Say more.
First of all, the person has to be saying something that's like of the person, about the person, not about their behavior, not about their, it's something like your hair is dumb or, I don't mean that to you. See, this is what I'm talking about.
That was a live role play.
Right. So.
Okay.
And then second is consider the source.
Yeah.
Right?
That helps a lot.
Who cares what most people say?
Well, I think the point is most people do care. And I see a trend. It is a problem. And I'm wondering how do we help people feel better in the sense in their day-to-day,
Yeah, my personal view is, I don't know, this isn't really necessarily my expertise or anything, but my personal view is if it's personal, you that's one check. Okay, it was literally of my person, the comment or the criticism or whatever. Okay, that's check one. Number two is, do I trust or care about the source? Mm-hmm. And then, but even then, is there validity to what the person's saying? Like if somebody that I love and care about tells me that I'm blue,
yeah, like
the color blue,
yeah,
there's no reality-based evidence that says that I'm blue. Right. So why would I care? And I use that example on purpose because if somebody you care about, so source is high, good, mm-hmm. information is you are in fact blue. So that's about you, mm-hmm. that's of your person. And if there's no outward validity to that, then who cares? Why you care about the person?
Yeah.
So the source is kind of validated, but the information is kind of based on what? Based on what evidence, right? So you're doing the love reality loop all the time, mm-hmm. which is, this person has a mental model. I have a mental model. Those are just mental models. What we want to do is test them against reality. So if the person says, you are the meanest person I've ever met,
yeah,
I'd be like, okay, well, is there any validity to that? Have other people called me mean? Mm-hmm. Is this a pattern in my life? Is there a specific example of where I was mean? Mm-hmm. Was that example misinterpreted, or did I have the intent to be mean? Those are all things that you could, if I asked 10 people, would they describe me as mean? 10 people
Yeah.
that knew me.
Yeah.
Those are all things you can do to test against reality.
Yeah.
Prior to all that, I wouldn't take it personally.
Yes, I agree with that totally. But I think a lot of us come into conversations with, for lack of a better word, baggage or assumptions, and that leads us into confirmation bias based on what other people are saying, even if the people that are saying it are not saying what we are hearing, right? So you say, I say, okay, so you say my hair looks stupid,
Yeah.
right? Which maybe it does.
Maybe it does.
I don't know. I can't see myself right now.
Yeah.
But the point is, if I come into that already feeling something that's looking for negative feedback, then I'm going to confirm.
Right, and that's where, you kind of have to take ownership of your feelings.
Yeah.
Right, which is, if I come into this already insecure or already this or already that, well, that's all my baggage, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm taking a statement that exists as a statement, and I'm putting the baggage onto it.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
I think we did an episode on emotion and how you store up all this liquid emotion, and then you try to get rid of it on things, right? So you do have to sort of, a lot of times somebody will say something and you take a little offense. Mm-hmm. But you have to have the metacognition at that moment to be like, well, why am I taking it? Oh, it's because I haven't been feeling great this week, or, whatever things are going on in your life that or whatever baggage that you have from your past.
But what you're saying right now is actually metacognition, being like that awareness.
Being aware of it, yeah.
Right. So
because that person said this statement, mm-hmm. but then if you hang a bunch of ornaments on that statement, little emotional ornaments, well, then you're adding to the statement.
Yeah.
And then you're reacting to the statement plus all that ornamentation that you've put onto it.
Well, I mean, the irony is you're not actually reacting to the statement.
Yeah.
You're reacting to the statement plus all the stuff you smeared on the statement.
Smeared on it, yeah.
And then when you react, then the person is like, wait a minute,
that's not what
I didn't say that.
Exactly.
You're putting words in my mouth, right? Or in some case, meaning in my mouth, right?
Yes.
It's, I think part of it is, for me, when I think about communication, having children that are now into adulthood and grandchildren, all of that, a lot of it is about just being aware that whatever is coming in, like whatever's being said to me, I am building a mental model.
Yep.
And I need to assume that my mental model might not be the same as the deliverer's mental model.
Yeah.
So a lot of time in my old age and my wisdom, I'll say, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's important.
I'll say, I think you mean this, but, am I right about what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean is like the most underrated question in being human, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think we don't ask it nearly enough because we think that because we both speak English, that all the words you're using, I know what they mean because they mean the dictionary definition, but they don't.
Right.
Like, ironically, the word that I started off with, stupendous, like I mean something totally different than what the dictionary says it means, and we didn't even plan that.
No.
What do you mean by, what do you mean when you say I was a jerk? Or what do you mean when you say you were mean to me? Or, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to just assume that I know what you mean. Because different words in your sentence might have different sort of subtle meanings to you.
Which is why when we say don't make assumptions, ask questions, I shouldn't assume that I know what you mean, or you
Definitely
shouldn't assume
not.
you know what I mean.
No.
It's better to say, oh.
What do you mean?
Say more about that.
What do you mean when you say blank?
Well, and that also comes into play a lot in parenting, because you have this sort of authoritative position over your kids, and your kids are always, I think your kids sometimes have bias because they're coming to the table with a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
We don't always know what that stuff is because kids today have electronics and so much other venues by which they're getting inputs into their life that we have no idea about. And so I think a lot of it is just saying, okay, let's slow down. It seems like you think I meant this.
Yes. Yeah, you kind of almost
we have to take the responsibility.
Take the responsibility of what do I mean? Because a lot of times they don't always have the skill, the metacognitive skill or the emotional intelligence to ask the question, what do you mean? To check.
Right.
I mean, a lot of adults don't have that either.
Sure.
But so you do exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in parenting, it's like it's our job to say, wait a minute, we're missing each other. Your reaction to my statement is a red flag that you think I meant something I maybe didn't.
Yeah. This is something I've had to practice a lot because sometimes I can be very literal.
Really?
Yeah. And so I will say something that has absolutely no bad intentions whatsoever, but I'm just saying something that is descriptive.
Yes.
But a vast majority of humans will take it personally.
Yes.
And to me, I'm just saying, it's like saying that this water bottle is black, and has stickers on it. It's not, I'm not criticizing the water bottle. I'm just describing the water bottle.
Yeah.
And, but it turns out a lot of people will say, feel like that description is negative or criticizing or mean or something like that.
Seems like we're almost wired, because we're humans, to be pretty, myopic or self-centered. Completely. So when a person says a descriptive statement to us, if you said a descriptive statement like your hair is blonde, I could very easily be like, well, what does that mean? Like, why are you saying that?
Is it too blonde?
Is it too blonde? Is it not blonde enough? And it's like, but I don't know why that is. Like, is it just the human nature that we're just sort of always looking out for ourselves and
I think it's biologically and evolutionarily, our brains are lazy. We find shortcuts all the time. And one of the shortcuts is that we have these words, and these words have definitions or they have meaning. And so if we can assume the meaning, then that's a shortcut, right? I don't have to ask, what do you mean? Because I know, not 7 out of 10 words, I know what you mean. Those are all little shortcuts. But the one that's operative in the sentence, maybe I don't fully know what you mean by that, because you're using it a little differently, or you're maybe like at the beginning of the podcast, I used a word I didn't actually know the meaning of. So maybe I'm using a word just kind of phonetically, stupendously to me is like phonetically, it sounds like you're doing awesome, Doesn't even mean that.
Apparently, you're extremely impressive.
Apparently, that's what it means. Which you could then say, oh, he's being cocky, Yeah. Right? Well, I wasn't being cocky. I was being I thought I was using the word correctly. So that's a great example of sometimes we use words just by the way they feel and not necessarily by their dictionary meaning, right? And sometimes we use technical words in different contexts that mean different things in different contexts. A lot of times words mean different things in different contexts, right? Bat, the bat was flying around, probably a black, bat.
Animal bat.
Animal bat.
Yeah.
But
it could be.
The bat was flying around and almost hit the pitcher.
Yeah. He threw it.
Somebody threw a bat, right? Different context, different meaning.
Yeah.
I think evolutionarily we find shortcuts, and then we crystallize those shortcuts. We essentially lock them in as shortcuts. And those are all kind of assumptions.
Yeah.
When we're talking about things that really matter, we should check some of those assumptions. We should be metacognitive about our own shortcuts. We should be metacognitive about the baggage that we're putting on those. And we should be metacognitive about the possibility that the other person is taking some shortcuts, like in the case that you explained with the kid. They think you're being punitive, and you're like, I'm not being punitive. I'm just looking out for you, or whatever. But they're coming from a paradigm of you're an authority and I'm in a lesser position, and there's this dynamic and
set of
things
assumptions around the
and
dynamic.
There's a bunch of assumptions there, and there you go. Then you have a misunderstanding.
I don't know. I mean, I see this all the time in personal and professional situations where what people would say, we miss each other, right? We miss each other. It leads to a conflict or an issue. For me, one of the biggest things is just the idea that we both have a mental model.
Yeah.
We're both building meaning.
Yeah.
And we have to check the degree of alignment to that meaning, right? Or alternatively, you have to check your mental model against the reality, the veracity of what you are assuming is true.
To me, it's like if you actually pay attention to what you're saying, a lot of times there's so many clues in what you're saying, because what you're saying is a derivative of like what you're thinking.
Right.
And a lot of times what you're thinking isn't totally obvious, but what you're saying, you can track it. So if you get good at sort of keeping a little bit, you have a bunch of neurons. Maybe you just take a bunch of them and just focus them on what you're saying. You can learn a lot about yourself, and you can learn a lot about conversation. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people say, I just don't understand what you're saying. I mean, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Right? And so think about that for a second. If you say the words, I don't understand what you're saying, then the next thing should be to stop talking
And ask.
and have the other person talk.
Yeah.
Because if you truly don't understand what they're saying, then you should listen more.
Yeah, there's nothing else to say.
There's nothing else to say. It's like, well, if I don't understand what you're saying, like, share with me what you're saying, right? But that's not what we're really saying. What we're saying is, I disagree with you, and here's why.
Yes, and
But we use the
covered
term,
it.
I've covered it
Yeah.
with, I don't understand what you're saying. Well, you're not really trying to understand what I'm saying. You're in an argumentative, lawyeristic paradigm, and you're using that as a rhetorical device. I don't understand what you're saying, blah, 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 blah. Here's why, and this and that, and then there's all this stuff behind it.
Or you can even, I mean, I've heard, like, I don't understand what you're saying, but it seems like you mean blah, blah, blah,
you're like,
blah, blah.
if you don't understand what I'm saying, why are you telling me?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like, ask me what I'm saying.
I think part of it is conversations can snowball. They can snowball. They can all of a sudden, you're like at point A and you're in this sort of innocuous conversation. And then you're down the road, not very far, and you're like, oh my God, how did this become that?
Yeah.
Right? And I think a lot of that is we don't take the time to slow down, check our meaning.
Totally.
Well, it's check the other person's meaning, check my own assumptions
And your meaning.
and my meaning.
And the phrases that you use and whether or not what you're saying is actually what you're meaning. Because a lot of times we're using all these rhetorical devices, and they're subtle, like the one I just shared.
And we're not even aware.
And we're not even aware. And if you just paid attention to what you said and whether or not it was actually in alignment with what you meant, which is what integrity is, like what you do and what you say are kind of like the same thing, or aligned. If you just pay attention to that for like a week, just pay attention to the words you use. And do they accurately reflect what you're saying? What you're going to realize maybe is they do, or you're going to realize, oh gosh, I use a lot of hedging and rhetorical techniques and blah, blah, blah. And you know, I certainly notice that out in the world, because I'm quite, tracking the literal meaning of things. And then I go, oh, they're saying something that they're not saying.
Do you think it would help if we all were literal?
Yeah, totally.
Really?
Yeah, I think it would be a beautiful world.
What would that look like?
I mean, not literal, like you can't use a metaphor. It would just be so much kinder if we just didn't take things so personally.
And you think literality would solve that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be a kinder place.
Because we would just take it at face value with no assumption of what's behind it? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends, I guess, what you mean by literal, right? Because everything, there's a guy named George Lakoff who brilliant scientist, he wrote a book called Metaphors We Live By, and basically a lot of what we do is metaphors. So in weird sort of way, there's, like, even in this sentence I just said, in a weird sort of way. So way is a path.
Right.
So that's a metaphor.
Right.
The word way is a path. The path is a physical thing, but now we're taking a conversational path.
I see.
And that's a metaphor for a real path. So everything is embodied or tied, grounded in real world physical experience. And as a result of that, we use that real world physical experience to create metaphors on metaphors on metaphors in what we're saying. So in that sense, I'm not talking that we are literal. Like, do you mean that we're walking on a path?
No, I get what you mean.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's a level of literal that would just be probably obnoxious. But literal, like, are you mad? No, I'm not mad.
Right.
You don't have to second guess the person because they
literally said
they're not mad.
Yeah.
Okay, but a lot of times what we do is go, no, I'm not mad.
And then they don't look at you for 4 hours.
And then they don't look at you, and you're like, really? You're not mad at all? Are you sure? Because it seems like you're mad. I think it would just be like we could clear this up pretty quick if we were just straight with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe literal is a misleading term. I think literal could mean on its face, right?
Yeah,
like I can remove any assumptions about what's the intent.
Yes, or rhetorical devices that mislead for all kinds of different reasons. I don't know. I'm describing like a world full of autistic people, right? Like, so it would be wonderful for us. I think it would probably confuse neurotypical people.
No. I think it would liberate them. I think we're trained, unconsciously trained into those kinds of rhetorical, subtle, manipulated devices of language because they're part of the wider context. You think about, we grow up in the era of advertising and manipulation of votes, and our own parents, love them all, probably also have some of those habits of conversation. Totally.
Yeah, it's it's baked into the way we communicate. But an example of this, if you ever want to try it out, is like there's these. It's going to sound terrible, but you can have like kind of personal chats with AI.
Personal chats.
Like personal, like you can almost have like a human almost like a human conversation. So, for example, you could say, you're working on something, and I'm just giving an example, but you could say like, "Are you stupid?"
You can say that to chat.
And they will. And it'll be like, well, I'm not stupid. I'm actually quite smart, but I was stupid in this particular thing. And it'll like, that's what I mean by literal. It'll literally just answer, because it's not like taking it personally. There's no personal with chat. And it's like some of the most liberating conversations you can have.
But we should make human conversations like that.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is if you literally did not take anything personally and you just answered, the question, and we're just like, yeah, sometimes I am stupid. Sometimes I do stupid things.
Yeah, but see what chat's good at, which we should be better at as humans, is separating out an instantiation of stupid from being stupid.
This episode is sponsored by Training Camp, the ultimate online spot for building the mental fitness that drives personal and professional change and success. At Training Camp, you'll have access to the science and practice of thinking, with personalized thinking assessments, tiered training, and best of all, practice that improves skill. Go to CabreraLab.org to learn more. And now, back to the episode.
But it's always an instantiation of stupid. And if you have every single instantiation is stupid, the sum total of instantiations is stupid, then I guess you could make a case that you are in fact personally stupid. But if 9 out of 10 instantiations are stupid, then you're 90% stupid. If 8 out of 10, then you're 80% stupid. If 6 out of 10, then you're 60% stupid. And there's like nothing wrong with that. Like, we've all been stupid.
Well, that's the thing. Let's say there's 10 moments, 10 instantiations, and in 3 or 4 of them, the person does something that is stupid.
Yeah.
But it's in a particular context and instance.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean they are stupid. It means there were a series of moments where they behaved stupidly.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, all of these things are clouds. They're all statistical probabilistic clouds, right? Like we get so hung up on these things being discrete structures. And if something is true, then it's true forever and always. Because we're binary and we're like we're not like probabilistic, and and we like to get locked in, and we're lazy. We like to get kind of save ourselves time and be like, well, am I stupid or am I don't know why we're using the word, the example of stupid, but
okay, you can
like
use
an example is in my 20s to my 30s, I think by and large I was stupid.
Because you made stupid choices.
Yeah, so in that moment, which lasted, let's say, 10 years, you could reasonably argue that I was stupid.
So, like, if you looked at your life, like the periods of the dinosaurs,
More
like
stupid than not
period.
stupid.
You had a stupid period.
More stupid than not stupid.
But I would say most people in their 20s have a stupid period.
Yeah, but
There's a period of stupidity.
I agree, but I had it like in my teens, my 20s. Right? So I'm like, I don't know why that's offensive. Like, to me, that just means I'm learning a ton.
Well, it's because of judgment.
Yeah.
It's because we load negative and positive connotations on words.
Yeah.
We feel judged by others, even if we're not. We judge ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just this whole mentality.
But when I had the benefit of being not diagnosed and going through school, like K-12, and I was just like pretty clearly stupid. That's what they told me. So at some point you get to the bottom of the barrel and you go, well, either I'm not going to make a big deal out of this thing that they're calling me, or I'm gonna
it's going to devastate you.
It's going to devastate me, right?
Yeah.
So you get to the point where you're like, okay, this word literally has no meaning anymore. It just has no meaning, because if stupid means that I'm just living, then yes, I'm alive. I'm alive, I'm living, I'm doing stupid stuff, and I'm stupid.
I would never think of you as a stupid person. I would say there are times when you maybe had, you made.
But again, it just doesn't make any sense, right? But stupid's a great word because it's a word that can cause people to have emotion, right? So it's a great word to use as an example. It's not like we're deciding whether you're a stupid person or not. Like, if I say you're stupid, I'm obviously talking in context. If I say you're wearing a white and black shirt, you're not like, I don't wear white and black every single day.
Yeah.
My skin isn't white and black with flowers on it. You don't be like, I am that description.
No, I understand.
You understand very clearly that I mean today you're wearing that particular shirt.
No, but here's one of those differences.
Yeah.
Between you and me. When you say you are stupid.
I don't say that.
No, but if you say, he doesn't say it. I'm obviously not stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my moments.
Yeah.
But like if you said you are silly.
Yeah.
Let's just use a non-loaded word. A lot of people, I don't know if it's neurotypical people, if it's a difference between you and me, because you're more literal about things. I will think that you mean as a person, I'm a silly person, rather than in that moment, I am being silly.
Yeah,
that's where language fails us, right? Because if you say you are X, I will automatically assume incorrectly that you mean I as a person am that thing. You think in instantiations and moments, whereas if you say something
I think in reality is that you're never going to step into the same river twice, because there's flow, and that life is flow. And I think you can test yourself, right? You can test whether or not what you're saying is true. Because if I said something like, "Hey, that was funny. You're funny." You wouldn't say to yourself, "Oh, he means that I as a human being am fundamentally funny and funny all the time.
So I should be a comedian."
Yeah, so I should go immediately and become a comedian, right? You mean you take it as it's an instantiation
in that moment.
But if I say you're stupid, then you take it as he's saying I'm stupid as a human being.
Yeah.
You take it personally.
Yes, you do.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the difference between those two things. Those are the same thing. They're structurally exactly the same. We use linguistic shorthand because we don't say, in this moment, you are, in fact, funny. You were funny,
That's true.
So we're using a form of shorthand.
It's just back to the efficiency and the laziness
and things like that. A lot of language is just a form of shorthand.
The other variable is you've got to check yourself Like if you say a statement and I'm automatically reacting to it, I'm be like, oh, why am I reacting to that? Because you're literally just saying.
It's just far more probable, right?
Yeah.
Like if somebody says, right when you make a meal, oh, you're such a good cook. Do they mean like you're Gordon Ramsay? No, they just mean like this was good food.
At that moment.
At that moment
meal
in
was
time.
good.
That doesn't mean that you've never cooked a bad meal and vice versa. Like you're a terrible cook. If you leave the shrimp things in the shrimp cakes. The little shrimp
If you
tails.
forget to peel the shrimp before you grind them up.
Right.
For
Like that
shrimp
was the
cakes.
one meal
They were
I think in
crunchy.
20 years, 30 years that you've made that was terrible.
They were
Because
crunchy.
it wasn't even terrible tasting. It was just crunchy
It was
crap.
a strange
Shrimp
texture.
cakes.
It was like
Yeah.
eating eggshells.
Yeah, in shrimp cakes.
In shrimp cakes.
But, you just wouldn't take it that way.
No, and actually in that moment, when you say, what's wrong with these shrimp cakes? I'm like, oh, yeah. Reality is these shrimp cakes are very crunchy.
Yeah,
And
like
it's
that's
not a
just
personal thing.
descriptive.
It's a
Do the
descriptive.
shrimp cakes take it personally?
No,
But they should.
no.
Why not? They're terrible. They're crunchy.
Not crunchy in a good way.
So should they take it personally?
No, of course not.
Why not?
Because they are, in fact,
Because it's just a description.
They are crunchy.
They are, in fact, crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
And they can confirm that they're crunchy with reality.
and they also can blame me for their crunchiness.
Blame is, we just did a whole big thing at the conference, and I think we did a podcast on webs of causality. I mean, what webs of causality fundamentally says is there's no real single blame.
Right,
There's blame to go around.
right. And some of the...
And that's just the reality of the universe.
Yeah,
So you can argue with that all you want, but
right. But one interesting data point that I read in the literature review we did was one of the reasons we're so in love with root cause is to be able to have blame.
yeah.
One
100%.
thing is the problem.
Yeah.
And that to move away from root cause analysis would require us as people to move away from the necessity of blame.
Yes.
And see that
absolutely.
the systems are the problem, not the people that's kind of a big shift.
It's a huge shift, and it taps you into like what's really happening in the world, in real life.
Yeah.
The flip side of blame, right? The identity other of blame distinction is like we like to take credit for things,
Oh yeah. That's
right? So credit is just the flip side. Like credit is essentially blame for good things, and blame is blame for bad things.
Yeah.
Right. So we like to get credit, and we like to have blame, and that is a form of laziness.
Why is it a
Because-
form of laziness?
Because it's not the way the real world works. There are multiple causes that lead to any effect. Period.
And multiple causes lead to any credit.
Well, they're the same thing. Credit is just right. So, like, if you succeed, you're going to want to take credit
I
for
get
that.
it.
Well, you did it. Oh, really? You did it like in a vacuum?
Yeah,
There were no
that's right.
other
I see.
things along the way. No mentors. No parenting. Nothing.
education,
No education.
yeah.
No lucky
Nutrition.
things happened along the way. I mean, it was just you.
All by yourself.
All by yourself, right? You just did it. Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
But that's a lazy way of thinking about it. And our brains are evolved to take the path that is of least resistance. So we do these little shortcuts like blame and credit, but they don't help us understand the universe any better
right.
or reality.
Because the reality is there's a bunch of stuff that led to both.
People argue, well, maybe having it be so simple, maybe that's what leads to success, right? Because if you're overthinking, people love to use the word overthinking.
Yeah.
And, they could be right. There's times where simplifying certain things make it easier to just move quickly and all kinds of stuff. There's other times where there's times where fire, ready, aim gets you in trouble.
Yeah.
Where you don't understand the system and then you do things and it doesn't work out as planned. But the one thing that very few people talk about is just the absolutely intangible benefit of seeing reality. It's like one of the most beautiful things you can do in life is just like when you are like, oh, like I kind of see how it all works. Mm-hmm. It's intangible how powerful that is when you get to see the way things work. And I don't think we put enough of a price tag on that one because I think it's pretty valuable.
It is. I think, though, part of the ticket to that is knowing how to be present.
Yeah.
Knowing not
Being present.
not being bogged down in the swamp of the past.
Totally.
Not sort of distracted by what you think's in front of you, but like actually being in that moment, because that reality, as you said, is constantly changing. River.
And not being in that present and not being in that reality leads to all kinds of things like depression, anxiety, judgment. And so like there's all these things that we don't like. We don't value that thing too much, right? We don't value like just the deep presence of reality, of tapping into reality and knowing how things work,
right.
and sort of like seeing it all play out in front of you. We don't tap into the value of that too much. But what we do tap into is the negative value of the opposite, which is anxiety, depression, judgment,
Loneliness.
never feeling just like free.
Yeah.
Liberated. Like those are huge costs.
Yeah. Crazy.
Is it?
Yeah, this all started with stupendous.
That's true.
A word that we both used and neither,
Wrongly,
we had different meanings of it, and it turns out both of our meanings were wrong.
Not so pico.
What did you just say? Not so pico?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Just an expression.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Not so pico? You made that up.
Yeah, I don't know if I made that up.
We'll have to
Not
look
so
it up.
pico. It's like more than nutso. Like the peak of nutso.
I see. You've made it.
The high peak of nutso.
I think you've taken a lot of liberty there. All right. Well.
It's a wrap.